Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Babbling Irons. So, today, West Ham did something we haven't done in 8 games, and that is win a game of football. Yes, I will repeat that. West Ham have won a game of football. We put the ball in the back of the net more times than the opponent and won a game. It's a novel idea that we have yet to review over the last 8 games, but we have finally done it. Sloth, how do you feel? We got a win. The magical 3 points has finally appeared.
I'm very relieved that we got a win. I would not say that I feel good about the win.
Yeah.
I was saying to you and Frankie earlier, obviously I didn't watch it live. Bit of a just a family circumstance where we went to a little pub for lunch because my gran felt a bit lonely. So a good little grandson. And I was, of course, following it on my phone, but got back, watched the stream, and, you know, I want to be positive because we've won, but Everton were just absolutely awful. Like, I can't get my head around using them as any sort of metric or baseline for performances in the Premier League, because if they play like that every single week, they're going to go down. They're not going to put up a fight. They're going to be down. And I just watched the Crystal Palace game, Crystal Palace Newcastle. Watching them and watching us, I thought the only reason we didn't concede is because we were playing Everton. If we play Newcastle and, you know, even if they play like they did against Palace just now, I think they win easily.
Yeah,
I wasn't particularly impressed by us. I was with a few players, and we'll get to them in a bit, but I don't see what a lot of people are talking about, and I don't really think it's enough. I thought we flattered Everton in a way, which is worrying because we've won, but I think I was reading the Sky updates when I was out, and they were saying that Everton looked the more likely to go ahead. Mm-hmm. And then I watched it and I thought, wow, if this is them saying they look the more likely to go ahead, then
this is. So before we get into the game, let's address one issue in the big issue that has been buzzing around the Twitterverse of West Ham and many a week. So obviously we got the 3 points. That's fantastic. It's something that we haven't done in 8 games. So do we persist with David Moyes? Do we continue with Moyes and give him another sequence of games? Now, I know we spoke about it in the last time. My view was pretty clear. If the view is that he has within the next 3 games, and I mean Premier League games, if he's to lose one of those or 2 of those games, if the view is if he loses 1 or 2, then we're going to sack him, then maybe we do that now, rather than going down the route we did with Bilic, where we had this constant cycle of games, which became disruptive, counterintuitive, and actually got the fans back up and actually turned them more on the manager, because you're now being forced to stay here, you're not performing, and we're having to endure this because people are not willing to act. For me, when I look back at the game, I was there today. There were some good phases of play within there, but ultimately we beat, as you stated, a very, very poor team. And whilst there were good patches in the game, I don't think you can class beating Everton at the moment really much of an achievement. And I feel bad for Everton fans, and there's no real disrespect to them, but ultimately their team is devoid not only of confidence but any direction, and it's a club that looks on its knees, which is sad because no one wants to see a team get relegated. But let's face it, that team has been so poorly run. It runs so many parallels to us.
And I was about to say,
and it's now you're looking at them thinking, you look like a team who probably need that relegation to clear out, but also your board is a massive problem now because it's starting to suffocate you. But back to us, I don't think the result or a win was good enough to keep him in. We mentioned it has to be, if it's comprehensive, then granted, but it wasn't comprehensive. I don't think there is enough going on. He can go out now on a high, in my view, that because he got a win. And I don't see enough that's happening. And as I say, if the view is if he loses one of the next EPL games or a couple, you've already set him up to fail. So you're either back fully to the end of the season and come what may, or it's make that decision. We can't leave that kind of hanging in the air because he puts it over the squad as well. But that's my view. I don't think he's done enough. I think we should potentially say thank you very much, move on, just so we can have that clean break and not have a manager who's consistently talks about, is he going, is he staying? I think that creates more division than anything, unless they are very clear in their point that he is staying to the end of the season. What do you think, Sloth?
I think we should sack him. Which, it does feel harsh to say after a win. But as we said, the manner of the win and the opponent is just such that I can't really take much from it, because next week we've got, next week, 9 days time, we've got Newcastle, then we've got Tottenham, and we've got Forest. Now, one of those games we should be bang up for and we should be winning. But you could argue that 2 of those games we'd be lucky to get something from. Now, I would much rather go into those games with a new manager and the potential new manager bounce, with players looking to cement a place, with players looking to try and impress. I think that Moyes looks completely devoid of any sort of drive from the players. I know that certain people have spoken about Antonio today, how he looked better than he has done in previous weeks. Well, I think if he plays like that against Newcastle, Botman's going to have an easy job. Like he's gonna ask for that every single week on the football pitch. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I think it's one of those where I'd much rather get a new manager in, get the players potentially playing for their future under him, and see something different. Because today, although we played the back 3, I just think we looked ordinary. I think any other side we'd have been blown away by, I think.
Yeah, and then we've got Epic Hash Time is in a very confident and buoyant mood, clearly. We are going down, but I think it feels like a bit of a fair assumption. No assumption, sorry. I think it's maybe a fair feeling based on how we've played under Moyes. And when we look at the next 3, so just to correct you, it's Chelsea before we played.
Yes.
But again, we are playing against 2 London rivals and Newcastle, who are in very good form at the moment, and I believe they've gone 19 games or something with stopping teams scoring in the first half. So that's quite an incredible statistic, and I don't think that's going to be and now enter West Ham to kind of go and change that. But you kind of look at it again, as you say, today we looked ordinary. So as much as important as the win was, I don't believe there was enough shown or enough urgency shown throughout to convince me that Moyes is the person to turn it around and keep going. For me, I believe that, as you say, the team were ordinary. We played against an incredibly poor team. I think had we played against a better team, it would have been a real struggle. Again, I think there were just too many patches where we conceded the advantage to them. But we'll go into that in a bit more detail as we kind of touch on the actual game itself. But I think we're both in agreement. If really we're looking at Moyes itself, yes, it was a win. It allows him to now go out with his head held high because he got that win. But there's not enough that came out of that performance to suggest that he is the man to lead us through that next 3 games without, essentially getting without much defeat. And also the Nottingham Forest game is so massive. The big 6-pointer point, is very true in that one. And I don't see the point in waiting to the Nottingham Forest game to then go, well, if you lose that, you lose your job. We just might as well be proactive now, make that change, bring in something new, give a new impetus to the team, new impetus to the club, to the fans, give them something. Yes, it's going to annoy people if he goes whilst we've won a game, but ultimately we need an injection of something. Ings gave us a bit of an injection today when he came on. It kind of lifted the crowd. But again, we can't just always rely on those small moments. We need something fresh, I think, now at the club. But we'll hold that there. We're pretty clear on where we are in terms of where we think more should go. But let's kind of get into the game itself. So the lineups were a bit of a surprise, I think, from our perspective. We also thought Iwobi was injured, but turns out he wasn't. So this is how both teams lined up in the game. Now, again, Ogbonna dropped in between Aged and Zuma to give a bit more experience. Obviously, Cresswell on the bench was a bit of a surprise, I thought, with Emerson coming in. Sufal, obviously, on the right. We went for a two-man midfield. I thought that was quite brave from Moyes. I'll give him his due there. Two-man midfield with Paqueta and Rice, because we also said that Everton most likely will play a three in midfield, so we would probably could get overrun and could get outnumbered. Benrahma and Bowen kind of tucked in really in the wings, and then we had Antonio up top. Everton, so we kind of matched up really, but they had Gray and Iwobi kind of playing that kind of free role behind Calvert-Lewin. But how did you feel, Sloth, when you saw those lineups? Did you think, from our perspective, that we had enough to counter some of Everton's strengths? Did you think that as a team there were some brave selections, or there was just some, maybe he was trying to hedge his bets and be a bit more contained?
I think there was just some long overdue changes there, particularly Cresswell. We've been over our feelings about his performances, so we don't need to rehash that. But getting a bit of pace on that left-hand side was really needed, especially dealing with their wingers and players like Damari Gray. But I think seeing that back five, we definitely looked a bit more solid. As I said earlier, it's very hard to judge. Aguerd had a fantastic game, and I'm really happy to see him starting to kick on. However, I can't judge it against this Everton side. Dominic Calvert-Lewin had the worst performance of an opposition striker I think I've seen this season. He was really...
I noticed Calvert-Lewin was on the pitch when he went down after getting fouled. I think that was the first time I actually noticed him on the pitch, and that was in the second half. And that's not being disrespectful. It was just how ineffective and just non-evident in a game. He was just not there.
Yeah. And I think he didn't do anything to work our defenders. I said yesterday on the preview for it that if he turns up, he's going to cause us problems. But he just didn't turn up. And I think while we can talk about how good Aguerd was and Zuma, you know, to be fair to him, although he made me nearly have a heart attack when he went down and appeared to be hobbling in that first half.
He looked injured the whole way through. After he made, I think it was a really good recovery run and tackle. After that, he looked injured for the rest of the game. But such was the state of Everton that an injured player can play on and nullify their attack, which is something in itself.
I mean, I think we knew the kind of risk that they had, especially with Onana, who I think was probably the one player on their side that I think, he looked pretty good today. They just offered nothing. So it's kind of hard for me to judge our performances. But I do think looking at that lineup, I think that's what we'll go with next week. I definitely feel a bit better about the back line. And my one kind of thing was I did want Antonio to be dropped for today. And I know people might criticize that. I don't really care, to be honest. I think people saying he had a good game, you know, maybe they were watching a different game to me, or they were just impressed by the fact that he ran for the first time this season, as opposed to just fannying about in the middle of the park.
But to be honest, being there, you see just how lazy he can be. There were a couple of opportunities where Everton, because they were sloppy in possession, where had he done more than just walk back to the halfway line, he could have put himself in a position to pick up on a couple of loose balls and attack directly at their back line. Out of possession again, he is still lazy. There are a couple of bits where he does go, but I do feel he's not working hard enough for his team.
Yeah.
Bowen was tireless. I know Benrahma got, I think SofaScore gave him a terrible rating, and yet he worked tirelessly on that side. He also, again, it came in the second half, but he also played the through ball or a nice just round the corner pass for Emerson to have an absolute thunder of a shot, which Pickford did well to save and tip onto the bar. But there were players that I felt that were working hard around him, and he was just kind of jogging around. And again, we can say that, he did really well for the first goal. But if we the second goal, if we're completely honest, the reason that goal comes about is because Tarkowski, for one reason or another, panics. Yeah. He throws himself into a tackle, which really felt like he was just trying to take out Antonio. He just didn't want him anywhere there, flew into the tackle. A lucky bobble meant it goes forward. And then Antonio does well. I'll give him his due. Does well because he rolls and rides that tackle. He drives into the box. But when he's making that cross, he isn't crossing into that location. He's trying to put it back to the penalty spot. You just look where he's looking. He's looking at Benrahma and Bowen. Now, Bowen is the reason that goal happened. Yeah. Bowen was incredible with that run. And he essentially took a gamble that ball is going in that area. And when that ball was hit, and also it looked like even when in the game, Antonio was just hitting that with just pace. There was no real kind of, I'm looking to pick him out. It was just hit hard. And it took a deflection again off of Tarkowski, which then looped the ball into the right location for then Bowen just to tap it in. And that goal came about not really because of exceptional work from Antonio. There is some credit in there. I'm not discounting that. But that was mainly down to Bowen picking up the ball, driving about 20 yards, getting the ball out to Antonio, and then just driving into the box. And whilst people will credit and go, well, Antonio was great there. But if you really break it down, there's loads of bits of luck. Now, again,
well, I think as well, there's the chance he had in like the second or third minute when he runs onto it, and it shows his decision making, how poor it is, where he kind of,
you're about when he was pressing Pickford.
Yeah, when he presses Pickford and he goes for it, the ball's played back into him. He could easily just take a touch, knock it round him. Doesn't have to go down, but force the contact, or just take that touch, nip round him, and it's a goal in the first 2 minutes. It's really that simple. Yet he tries to do a dummy, and nothing happens. And then in the 36th minute, when there's a great ball played in,
Everton's cross was fantastic as well. By the way, he absolutely picked him out. I'm in that end of the pitch. And when Emerson gets there, he stops, and I know I'm sitting there, I'm screaming to my dad, back post, back post, back post.
Yeah.
And he picks him out. It's a beautiful cross, because you've got to remember, Everton got some incredibly tall centre-backs who are very good in the air, and he just drops it perfectly on his head.
And then Antonio just doesn't make a decision. He doesn't make a decision. He needs to either work Pickford and hope it comes back out, or pick out Bowen, I know we're saying he needs to pick him out with his head, and that's not an easy thing to do, but he doesn't do either of those. He literally
when he first joined, all of his goals came from headers, and he was exceptional at it. And that just seemed to go, and it was just one of those where you just go, even he was put his head in his hands, like, how have I missed that? And again, how did you miss that?
Yeah.
You had no pressure. It was put perfectly on your head. And you did. So it's things like that. And there's parts of Antonio's play where I looked at, I went, he's done well. That's a good bit of performance. Other parts of it, I'm going, you are not working hard enough. And it's one of those, and I turn around to my dad, and one of the points was like, if he just shuts up and actually puts in the work and the effort, and he plays like that for the entire time, and he plays hard for when he is on the pitch, then he'll start to get his form back. But he's too busy just walking around off the ball. And when he does get the ball, it's against his decision making. It just isn't all there. And again, that shot. But let's not kind of harp on it. Let's talk about some of the good things that happened in the game. Now, obviously, Emerson came in for Cresswell. There are some moments, I think, in the early stages where we were kind of trying to feel our way in. We forced some kind of turnovers from Everton in possession because they were pretty poor playing out the back. Pickford looked at back and nerves every time the ball went to it as well, which I'm not surprised because that defence looked incredibly shaky. But, I thought Emerson grew into the game. Obviously, he put in the cross as well, which I believe it was, I think it was Zuma actually won the header for Bowen. But again, it's things like that. It was a floated cross, but it wasn't one of those aimless ones we've been doing. I was deliberately trying to pick out where we had two incredibly strong centre-backs in a good position. He picked those out. I don't believe it was just, I'm going to loft it in.
No.
He picked them out, like he did with Antonio. And again, we've got a nice little flick. Very good movement from Bowen, right on the cusp of being offside. But again, brilliant awareness from him in that case to obviously go and get that goal. Again, as we said, the second goal as well was really well done from him. But I thought one of the players that really stood out in that kind of first half was Aged. His control was fantastic. Anytime he got pressed, he never looked phased. He was always able to find that pass. He was able to defend everything that came to him. He had one bit, I think, where he just scooped it up in the air. But again, he still recovered and managed to defend the situation, get the ball away. And he just helped us break lines from a deep position. He managed to pass the ball. He could have, again, he is able to essentially absorb pressure and play through it. And it's an incredible asset to have in the midfield because the amount of pressure it took off the likes of Paqueta and Rice to receive the ball in dangerous positions or when players around them, because he had a player who could go, I can miss you and I can ping it 30, 40 yards diagonally. And he did that perfectly at times. Bowen was really good at drawing Everton quite compact and then hitting it out to Soufal. And I think that actually worked quite well because for once, them two seem to work really well in tandem again. It's been a long time coming, but they seem to work quite well in tandem. And I think it was so impressive to see the way that Aged took control defensively in a lot of situations. You could see if the ball's played behind him, he's telling a Bonner to go there because he's saying, I'm going here. He was constantly talking to that back line and was always managed to get himself into a position where he could slow the attack or he could impact. What about you? How did you view his performance?
Oh, I thought he was fantastic. He was so composed in possession, but also had that pace that you mentioned where he just didn't look phased. He could just knock it past someone. But his range of passing is something that we have lacked for so long. Having Ogbonna and Zuma next to him, I think meant that he felt more confident to freely try and ping it about. And some of those passes didn't work, but he hit them with such kind of not venom, but that right angle where if someone gets their head on it, it just goes straight up. It's not a case where
it's forcing the team to play for a second ball because you have to try and attack it to stop it. And I thought we did that was something we mentioned in the preview that we have to be very good on those second balls. And I thought second phases of play, we were good. We were on that. We did. In a crowd, especially by me, there's a few not happy with how at times we didn't press, but actually it was a really good defensive structure where we nullified them and asked them to, well, if you can't hit through the middle, we're going to expect you to try and hit on the wing. Because they didn't have wingers, they had fullbacks. It meant Soufal and Emerson constantly just had it quite easy because they could just read the pass. And especially, I thought Soufal, he dealt with that very easily. He had a bit more trouble when obviously McNeil came on over Mikalenko. But by and large, he had quite a comfortable day, I think, so far. Emerson had a bit more of a time to deal with, but I think he, again, did quite well.
I think, as we say, it's really hard to judge the players because Everton were so poor. Yeah. And, I think Aguerd was great, but, Rice put in a performance which is the level that we will come to expect from him. And Bowen looked a little bit more like himself. But as I said, and I keep saying, I sound like a stuck record, it's really hard to judge these players when you're playing such poor opposition or opposition who just didn't look Premier League quality today. And I don't particularly like Everton. I don't want to see anyone get relegated. I don't like that sort of thing. I don't mind if they go down, but I think, it's really hard to judge, because as much as I'd like to say so and so really, really impressed me and I thought he was the best on the park, all that, that could be Newcastle and we lose that game 5-2. It could be a top team like, as we mentioned, Tottenham, and as much as I hate to say it, we lose that game 5-2. We probably don't score those goals because they're set up better defensively. I just think it was a game that I can't get too excited about, because the level of the opposition made us look good.
Yeah.
And when we have been as poor as we have been for weeks and weeks, I think it could almost be a false dawn as such for people to think.
It's a false sense of security because we win. It's we've maybe turned the corner. It's a confidence builder. It's all of the cliches start to come out in which to state that you give more chances or you give a chance to remain, which is part of the problem. I think it becomes a cliche game of, we battled, we did this, but ultimately it's like, if you really break it down, it was a very average performance against a very poor team. And the way we started the first half, Everton had a very good opportunity within the first minute of the second half. We conceded a lot of space to them. Now, granted, they were always going to attack us a bit more, hence why they went with McNeil as a wing back and Iwobi as a wing back to kind of go for it. And they kind of went for a bit of a high risk strategy, but they are more impotent than we are, quite frankly. The surprise was today, I joked at the game, that's our first goals inside the area for 3 games, which aren't penalties, which again, it just highlights how bad we've been in games. But, there were a couple of bright spots. Again, Danny Ings came on, looked quite bright, won a nice foul at one point. I quite like that. But it's those little bright the reason why I liked it was because he picked the ball, he dropped his shoulder one way and it went the other, and the defender was completely bamboozled and just checked him. He nearly played a superb long ball into Bowen, because, again, they were petrified. Tarkowski was not happy. He really was not enjoying that game. And I quite enjoyed that, because I think many a time Tarkowski has come to London Stadium and should have been sent off for, let's just say, over-enthusiastic tackling to the shins. I quite enjoyed watching him really struggle and not have a good day against us. And I know, obviously, some people have I've seen Twitter today where some are trying to say that Ben Rama is terrible and he didn't do this, didn't do that. It's like, actually, he had a decent game, did do some nice things. His shot was the 13th minute was the thing that kind of woke us up and got us kind of going. And also, Ben Rama was up against Mina, so when he's dribbling, you may get round him, but then you've got a big guy with really gangly legs who can catch up, and he's physically much stronger than him. So, again, what he was asked to do, he did well. Some of the times defensively he got done. He did get done with a nutmeg. Bless him. Never nice. But no. I thought he did okay. Again, a lot of the players I thought did okay. I don't think there was really any impressive performances apart from Rice stood out as usual, really. He kind of actually stepped up. He was unlucky not to score. And again, there was a funny moment when Flynn Downs come on and out of nowhere just comes steamrolling into Onana and just completely flattened this 6'5" guy when he's 5'7". Did kind of make me chuckle at the time during the game. But again, it was just the second half just kind of played out as some would say it's a professional performance. I wouldn't say it was a professional blocking and keeping the team out kind of performance. It was one that it was the team we were playing against that was ultimately incredibly poor. The one real kind of opportunity that they had, bar that first minute, was one where it got played in behind and again made an incredible recovery tackle, which then made my heart kind of flutter a little bit because it looked like he picked up an injury but got up. But it was just, again, it wasn't, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a professional performance. It was, we benefited quite a lot in that second half, bearing in mind how much ball we gave away and how much time we gave them from an incredibly poor team without any real direction on the pitch. And whilst it's very good to get the 3 points, I don't feel as positive as maybe some others are. I don't think certain players that have been talked out as being great were that good. Like, for me, Rice and Aguerd are the only players you can turn around and go, what a performance, a quality performance. The rest you go, steady, Eddie kind of performances. There was nothing great, nothing special about them. It was just very bog standard against a very poor team.
I think the big thing is next week it's going to have, next week it's going to have to be stepping up, taking that confidence boost, and we have to get something. If we don't, I think we have to say goodbye to Moyes. I think it's we can all go, oh well, we've got 3 points, but there are teams around us who can also do that, and it's unpredictable. So we've got an extremely tough run, and I do worry still.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a valid point. We got the win, which is incredible. I'm really, really happy about the win. I think it's put us up to 15. So there are things to be positive about. There are massive things that I think we need to work on still. But the most important thing today was getting 3 points. I think we're both in that agreement that Moyes isn't really the guy to take us forward beyond this point, because looking at the games coming up, the likelihood is going in this sequence of 3 games or 4 games, it is setting him up to fail. And we probably should just be a bit more forthcoming. But yeah, so we've said what we think about the game. We don't think it was a great game, but what we do value is the 3 points. And the 3 points is massive to build on going into the next games, where we are going to have to massively step up and to show a bit more as to what we're about, or these players to start to really kind of prove that they deserve, 1, the price tags that they had when we bought them, and 2, to kind of make the point that they really have a future beyond next year. Because really, I think that's what a lot of these players are now playing for. Because Moyes may not be there. So some of these players will be playing for their futures next year. So they need to have that in mind when they go out on the pitch. If I want to be here, if I want to be in this league, I now need to really step up. But let's kind of end with a couple of positives now, really. Let's kind of talk about who our man of the match is. So Sloth, who from the game, which we're both saying wasn't great, but who was the man that kind of stood out for you?
Hands down, Aguerd. I think it was really good to see him in the side, and really good to see just a glimpse of what I think he can offer to us going forward.
No, completely agree. I think, again, he was just in control. The way he could absorb pressure when he did have possession, the passes he could make out of defence. And I know it sounds ridiculous that I'm talking about a centre-back and talking about defender, and all I'm talking about is how he was in possession. But it is so key in the modern game to have a defender who can do that. And then when he had to defend, he was there. He was spot on. Making last-ditch sliding tackles in your own area is something that most players are petrified to do, but he did it with such accuracy and brilliance. A bit like this scoop tackle that Wan-Bissaka did against Wilfried Zaha the other day. One of those tackles you absolutely fear as a fan, but when you see a player pull it off, you're like, what an incredible tackle, and you value and realise how good a defender they are. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. And I know this news is probably not news to some, but it looks as though Nice are also about to sign En-Nesyri, and which is interesting because Nice were after a striker, same striker as us. That striker is not in the squad today for Lorient, and now Nice are on the verge of signing En-Nesyri. They were £10 million behind us with the Moffy deals, so maybe putting 1 and 1 together and coming up with 3, we
don't get my hopes up.
I know. I don't want to get your hopes up, but when you look at how it is, they were after a striker and they've just are about to sign one There were £10 million behind us for a deal. So maybe, just maybe, we may see another edition coming from Lorient, and this edition will be Tyrone Moffey. Let's hope, fingers crossed, because Ings looked really good when he came on. I think he showed a lot more energy and more purpose than Antonio did. I know people liked what Antonio did today, but I think actually Ings in that small cameo showed he will offer far more for us. If we can bring in a player like Moffey, I think Moffey today would have destroyed Everton in transition.
Uatara got an assist today for Bournemouth. So
yeah, exactly. So I think when you look at it, hopefully, fingers crossed, there's a breakthrough. And the last comment we're going to throw up at the end, because we've been talking about it all the way through as to whether we think it should stay or not, is East Side views. I wanted us to lose today, so Moyes doesn't keep his job. I joked during the game is, we've won, but at what cost? It is maybe one of those games, and I think some of us have felt that. But let's hope that this win isn't a forced on if they decide to keep Moyes. And if their decision was already made that they was going to move Moyes on, let's hope that this win today doesn't resurrect feelings of nostalgia from last season or any kind of sentiment, and they stick with their decision and say, thank you very much. You've ended on a high. You've done DG proud with 3 points today. Thank you. But we're now going to go in a different direction. Let's hope if that decision was made prior to the game, they stick with it. But part that to one side. Let's concentrate on the 3 points. Let's concentrate that we're now 15th. Granted, 1 point above relegation, but we are 15th at this point in time. And we've finally got our first win in 8 games. So something to build on, something to be positive about, at least on the weekend. We scored 2 goals, didn't concede any, and we won the game. So there's one last thing to say, Sloth, and that is, as always, come on, you
Irons.